Hey there folks, John here with Through My Lens, and today I'm coming to you with another knife review. Today we're going to be looking at this Koenig Arius in carbon fiber. Now I did an unboxing video on this a few days ago. You can look back in my playlist and you can see that video. I highly recommend you take a look at it. I did give my first impressions of the knife, and that kind of sets the stage for this review. Now the Koenig Arius is not a new knife. It has been reviewed quite a bit on YouTube. It's very popular, and I will say that the online knife community really has embraced Koenig and the Arius in particular as just a icon within the knife community, particularly within higher end production knives. Now, Koenig as a brand really first came into prominence after winning the most innovative blade at Blade Show. Bill Koenig won that in 2015 with a model called, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Zenaida. And that model was noteworthy because it did not have any screws. You could assemble it and disassemble it without any screws. You know, from there, Koenig went on to manufacture some other models. When he first started, a company called Millet Knives manufactured all his knives. But by 2016, Bill had opened up his own manufacturing facility in Boise, Idaho. It's not far from Chris Reeve Knives, and he now manufactures all his knives, so it is an American-made knife. That's one of the reasons why I was attracted to the knife, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit later, because obviously at this price point, you do have quite a few choices from knives literally all over the world. Now, the Koenig Arius belongs to a relatively new and growing class of CNC machine, what I'll call mid-tech-ish, or technically, I guess this is a production knife, but this class really was pioneered by the Grismo brothers and the Norsemen. That's another super popular and very well-respected knife in this class. More recently, the Holt Blade Works Spectre, is another one that is kind of, mid-tech-ish, kind of a production knife, kind of defies some of the more traditional classic definitions in that regard. So in the short time that Koenig has kind of been in existence, if you want to say since 2015, they have garnered a fantastic reputation as a company. And they do offer something that's very important to me, a spa service, very similar to what Chris Reeve offers, which for me is a must for any knife that I buy, particularly at this price point. And what I mean by a spa service is that you can send this back to Koenig, pay a small fee, and he will refurbish the knife, he will refinish the titanium scales, he will refinish the blade, sharpen it, and basically send it back to you in, you'll think you have a new condition. I've done that with Chris Reeve before. And again, any knife that I'm going to buy that's really over $300, I want to make sure that spa service is there because, I like a pristine knife, and that's just me. There's a lot of guys out there that, are use your knife kind of guys and scar it up, scratch it up, and I'm just not that way. So, so along with, a fantastic reputation as a company for customer service, Koenig has also been known for precision and quality of manufacturing. So let's kind of get into the knife, and I'll start with the packaging. A lot of people have praised this packaging, and I think it's good. I think it's not great. This is very, very similar packaging to what I received when I bought my Steelcraft Bodega, which is basically a Riot knife from China. It was a magnetic box, very similar to this, with very similar, accoutrements that came with it. You've got your certificate of authenticity here. Shows what the blade is in terms of material. Shows what the handle material. Shows the born on date. You get a sticker with that too. There's a sticker in here. And you get a polishing cloth, and of course it's a Koenig branded one. It's a very nice. It's a little higher quality than many that I've seen. Of course, it's Koenig branded. So again, for me, and I'm probably being hypercritical here, again, because of the price point, I think the packaging is good. I would call it falling somewhere between Hinderer on the low end, who provides some of the worst packaging in the industry in terms of being, I guess, relative to the price point. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Chris Reeve, who I think does just an exceptional job at the packaging. This falls somewhere in between. Again, good, not great. In terms of the knife, it's fantastic. Overall, I'm very, very happy with it. This one is, of course, a carbon fiber scale, titanium back. These knives come in a lot of different variations in terms of finishes and options that come with them, and they run at a variety of price points. About $600 on the low end for what's called a plain Jane all titanium that has no extra millwork. It's very similar to this knife, just has a titanium presentation inside instead of carbon fiber here. I had one of those briefly. I bought one on the secondary market, but did return it back to the seller because, quite frankly, they misrepresented it. But I did get to spend some time with it, and I did decide from that experience that I wanted the carbon fiber scale, and I'll show you why. This thing is exceptionally light. Probably one of the things that I like about this the most is just how light it is. Previously, the lightest knife that I have in my collection is this Darrow Ralph Dominator ventilator. Again, very similar to the Koenig Arius in that it's titanium on one side, carbon fiber on the other one. This has, the ventilator has material taken out of the carbon fiber scale for additional lightness. This was the thinnest, lightest knife that I had ever come across. And you can see that weight comes in at 4.02. Now, I have taken the Koenig apart. I have cleaned it and lubricated it, reassembled it, and over the past several days have been carrying it and flipping it a lot, working it in. So I got a chance to look at the insides, and there is a lot of millwork that has happened both on the titanium side and on the carbon fiber scale in terms of lightning pockets that have been milled into this to make it even lighter. And I'll demonstrate here. You saw how light 4.02 the Darrow Ralph was. This is coming in at the exact same weight, 4.02 ounces, which I think is fantastic. You're essentially got a 4-ounce knife that makes it just a joy to carry, which I, again, so appreciate. I think that makes this a much more EDC-able knife than the plain Jane cousin that has titanium on both sides. Now, just kind of going over some of the unique design features. Of course, there's this pivot. You can see it's kind of got a D shape to it, and that prevents it from spinning once you insert it, which I definitely appreciated. A lot of knives, you have to hold both sides of the pivot on the pivot screw and then the pivot itself to prevent it from rotating when you're reassembling it. That's not the case here. You can just tighten the pivot on this side, and that D shape keeps it locked in. Really appreciate that. Really, really cool. Again, I think this is kind of a genius design for a pivot, so that one of the benefits is you'll see there really isn't a screw hole here. That means you're never going to have a screwdriver on this, and you're never going to booger that up in terms of the finish with a screwdriver when you're disassembling or reassembling. So 2 thumbs up on that. Similarly, I love the clip design here. I've heard some people complain that they have problems getting this over thicker pants. I didn't experience that with the pants that I used it with. But what I think from an aesthetic standpoint is really neat is that The attachment screw that attaches this is actually on the inside of the titanium scale so that it is not seen. I think that is fantastic, both from a form and function standpoint. 2 thumbs up on that. Really nice pocket clip. It's milled. You can see that it has had a lot of material taken off in this area to give it some of the same tensile properties as a spring clip. Some people don't like a milled clip because they don't have the springiness of a traditional spring clip, but this kind of has the best of both worlds. So fantastic, 2 thumbs up. Very attractive, and I think it's very different from many other clips. Now, this particular Arius is has a blade that's made from M390, which I'm thrilled with. That is my favorite blade steel. One of the things I appreciate about how Koenig does their blades is they're pretty austere. You can see it just says, it has the name Koenig, very understated on the front side. The back side is essentially sterile. From a finish standpoint, this has what he calls his bright wash here and then polished flats. Now, the bright wash looks pretty darn similar to the stone wash that's on my Chris Reeve Sebenza here. I think it's just a touch brighter, but it's very, very similar. If you have a Chris Reeve Sebenza, either a plain Jane or like one of the micarta models that has the Chris Reeve stone wash, I think this is pretty darn similar. It looks like they've done basically a satin brushed kind of a finish and then done a light stone wash over that, but leaving again, the flats are called polish. I see it more closely resembles what I would call a satin or a brushed finish, but regardless, whatever you want to call it, I find it very, very attractive, almost kind of like a two-tone between the two finishes. This has a pretty high hollow grind that is very, very thin behind the edge. This is reputed to be a very, very slicey knife. It came very sharp from the factory. No issues or no qualms with that blade. Again, M390 being one of my preferred blade steels, probably my most preferred blade steel. I also really appreciate, you've got kind of a drop point here, and then you've got all this detail work in the swedge area that almost looks like the metal here twists, which I think is really cool. You do have an opening hole here that you can use alternatively from the flipper. I can use it best left-handed. Didn't do a very good job on camera there, of course. A lot of people like to middle finger flick these. I am horrible at middle finger flicking. I find it very easy to get my hands on the lock bar and when I try to flick this, which of course makes it virtually impossible to do. Yeah, I'm just not very good at middle finger flicking, but a lot of people like it because they can do that. I just can't. I'm just not that talented, I guess. Koenig and the Arius, this is considered to be one of the premier knives in the knife industry in terms of the action. Now, an action is very, very subjective, and it's something that really gets into knife nerd stuff that really is not particularly important. This is just something that, us knuckleheads who pay several $100s for a silly knife look for and appreciate. The detent is pretty heavy. It's designed to promote a blade deployment that really comes out with authority. It fires out very strong because it's got that heavy detent. You have to put in a little extra effort to overcome that detent, and that force goes then into the deployment of the knife, which comes out fast and hard. Again, very subjective. For my taste, the detent is a little heavy. Not excessively so, but a little heavy. In my mind, the detent needs to be strong enough so that the knife, you basically can't flub the deployment. I'll use this Hinderer XM18 here, this skinny sheep's foot. This has a much lighter detent, but it's still strong enough that you have to put enough force in to overcome the detent that the blade is almost guaranteed to deploy. I used as minimal effort as I could. I basically completely backed off of doing any effort once the detent broke. But the detent is strong enough that you're always going to use enough force to bring that blade around. And in my mind, that's really as strong as the detent needs to be. This knife, of course, has a stronger detent. Again, I think it's designed that way to promote, that really hard firing, fast action. The other thing that it's very well known for is being very drop shut. As you can see, this example is very drop shutty, as Nick Shabazz is wanting to say. So really no concerns with the action, other than it's, for my taste, your mileage may vary, the detent is a little strong. Aesthetically speaking, this hits all the right notes with me, as it does ergonomically. I really appreciate the fact that there's only essentially 3 screws that you need to remove. You don't have to remove all these screws. You can, if you want to remove just this carbon fiber scale here, all you have to do is remove these 2 screws and remove the pivot, and then you can remove the scale. You can then remove the blade. You can completely clean it. You don't need to take these scales out, or excuse me, these screws out, unless you want to remove the backspacer here, the anodized backspacer. Aesthetically, love the look of the backspacer here. It does have, of course, the lanyard hole here, which I'm not a big lanyard guy, so I would never use that, but it kind of flows well with the rest of the knife. Some really nice details here. Some little bit of jimping there. A little bit of finish work, really nice. The details are really what you're paying for, at this level. Again, this particular knife, as shown, $750. If it had some mill work in here on the titanium, as some versions do, it would be a bit more expensive. I had initially hoped that mine would have some of that millwork that can be found on some of the models, because I thought it might improve the grip. Again, ergonomically, I don't have any problem with the grip. You lock in very nicely. The flipper tab kind of comes in front of your finger there. There is no jimping here along the spine of the blade. Kind of missed that, but you do lock in pretty well. You can see that there is kind of a slanted area there that your thumb can rest again, so it locks in very nicely. I have no issues with the ergonomics for however you would use this from cutting tasks. And one of the things I do like about this knife is that I have no qualms about using this defensively. As I've talked about in other videos, I have taken defensive knife classes from TDI, and this can be, because it's a flipper, you can deploy it ambidextrously. The blade at 3.5 inches of length would function very well if need be, or pressed into a defensive capability. So while I don't consider this a tactical knife per se, it's more of a kind of a luxurious, gentlemanly, larger sized knife, harder use knife. I think it's designed to be, but it can definitely flex into a defensive posture if need be which I really appreciate. Again, this knife is often compared to the Savenza, and I'm not going to do a comparison because in this video because I'm going to do that in another video. But I think the more apt comparison, quite honestly, is comparing it with the XM18. The ergonomics are very similar, and of course the method of deployment is very similar as well. So if you like the XM18 and how that fits in your hand, it is fairly similar with the Koenig Arius. Final thoughts here on this knife. I do think it's fantastic. Sure do wish it cost a little less than $750, but I understand why it's that expensive. And ultimately this is going to be a keeper for me. I do tend to appreciate higher level manufacturing, engineering, and design in many aspects of my life, with my watches, with the vehicle that I drive. I tend to like over-engineered, over-designed, heavy-duty products, and this really hits all the notes. I think the carbon fiber scale is really fantastic. I actually like the look of this better than the plain Jane version with titanium on both sides. And of course, because this is so much lighter, I think you can EDC this particular version of the Arius a lot easier. Of course, at $750, this is almost a drop in the bucket. You can really go crazy with the Arius and some of the different finishes and the different scales and options in there. Of course, sometimes Koenig opens his books and allows people to do custom stuff, so I'm sure that's crazy expensive too. So overall, I can understand why this is considered such an icon and is held in such high regard and highly esteemed. And I'm just amazed that Bill Koenig, as young as he is, he's still in his 20s, I believe, has been able to achieve this knife. I didn't mention it before. Bill Koenig didn't design this knife. It was designed by, I believe, T.J. Fisher. I'll annotate that if I'm getting that name wrong. But that design was provided to him. And I'm assuming, of course, Koenig has had some input into that design as well. But from a company standpoint, in terms of the customer service, the after-sale support with the spa service, and with everything this knife brings to the table, I can understand the price. I may not like it, but I can understand it and I can live with it. Well, there you have it. That is my review of the Koenig Arius from Koenig Knives. Really just a fantastic piece. It was a grail for me. I've wanted one of these for most of 2020 after I got to spend a little bit of time with a buddy's Arius. And I'm really happy that I have it in my collection of American-made, hard-use, over-engineered knives. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Take care. God bless. We'll see you in the next one. I hope you've enjoyed this production from the Through My Lens YouTube channel. If you did, please click on the like button and do share the video on social media. If you'd like to see more content like it, please do subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and do check out Through My Lens at www.throughmylens.org.